Hello Internet, welcome back to Thrums to Twilight, the channel where I, Vincent, talk to you, the abyss, about books, movies, music I enjoy, find interesting, or a combination of the two. Today I'm going to be talking about this novel, Stella Maris, by Cormac McCarthy. It's one of two novels that are connected to one another. The other one is called The Passenger. This one actually is the second one, but I have not read The Passenger. I'm a psychotherapist in my day job, and I'm going to be bringing a little of that perspective to my discussion of the book. If you are mostly interested in my thoughts, I'm going to put a chapter in the video timestamp, so you can just hop there if you'd like, but I'm going to contextualize the book a little bit first. Cormac McCarthy is known for Blood Meridian, which I read when I was quite young. I don't remember it very well now, and for No Country for Old Men, which was made into a very iconic film by the Coen brothers. There's a third book, The Road, which I have not read, which also was made into a film and that is considered a little more accessible. He's known for having a slightly arcane and quite challenging writing style. My favourite book by him that I've read is actually a shorter book called Child of God, which is a very kind of disturbing, abject novel about a murderer. I really do think it's brilliant. He's now in his 90s and he published this novel, Stella Maris, when he was around 89 years old. So Passenger and Stella Maris are considered late work, if you like. And this is unlike anything I've ever read by him before. So the first page in Stella Maris seems to be kind of the front sheet in a file in an archive. It looks like this. It has an image of the institution, which is Stella Maris, is the name of a psychiatric hospital in Black River Falls, Wisconsin. It was set up in 1950. We have a case study from October 1972, and it says the following. Resident unit, that means inpatient, case 72118. Patient is a 20-year-old Jewish Caucasian female, attractive, possibly anorexic. Arrived at this facility 6 days ago, apparently by bus and without luggage. Admission signed by Dr. Wagner. Patient had a plastic bag full of $100 bills in her purse, something over $40,000, which she attempted to give to the receptionist. Patient is a doctoral candidate in mathematics at the University of Chicago and has been diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic with a long-standing etiology of visual and auditory hallucinations. Resident of this facility on 2 prior occasions. So this case study description is an introduction of one of 2 central characters in the book, Alicia. She is in dialogue with a therapist, a psychiatrist called Dr. Cohen, and the entire book is a transcript of their conversations. And it doesn't say who is speaking, you just understand this from, you can very easily tell who is the doctor, who is the patient most of the time. It's not like a screenplay, it's just written as paragraphs, but it's their dialogue. Whatever information you get about their backstory, about their lives, about their characters, about their appearance, about the context around them in the institution, you get through what they say to one another or what is implied in their speech. In this way, it's even more sparse than a play would be. There are no stage directions, there are no descriptions of the scenography. There's no other contextual material whatsoever. You get to learn through their dialogue that Dr. Cohen has a wife that he was separated from for a period of time, and you begin to hear, first implicitly and then more explicitly, about Alicia's brother Bobby, who I believe is the central character in The Passenger. You learn that Alicia was a mathematician, but that she has kind of struggled to maintain her commitment to mathematics, and this is partly to do with her own kind of philosophical ideas or experiences around mathematics and physics. It's also partly to do with the way that her life has developed and a certain kind of tragedy and sadness. You learn something of her family and something of the people around her. Her father worked on the Manhattan Project, so he was partially responsible for the atom bomb, and this is now in the 70s, so the kind of horror of Hiroshima and the Cold War hangs over their conversations. You learn also that she has throughout much of her life seen various figures. There's one called the Thalidomide Kid. He's one of the central ones. He's a guy who has arms that are like, that she describes as being like flippers. And there are other figures that come to her. She talks about them in a way where she considers them to be real, to have a certain ontological status that is equivalent to maybe the doctor she's speaking to, but not the same. Another central part of their conversations is that the psychiatrist, Dr. Cohen, apparently believes that she is at serious suicidal risk. And it seems that he wants to understand why she's there, if she wants to be saved. And she gives very evasive answers about why she came to the hospital. She will just say that she didn't have anywhere else to go. So there's a certain cat and mouse game between them where he's trying to find out whether he can help her. At the same time, this is a woman who is 20 years old and has been speaking to doctors, psychiatrists, therapists most of her life, is very used to the way that they talk to her, finds it all a little predictable, and it's also additionally highly, highly intelligent. So some of the things that I loved about this book are that the relationship between Alicia and Dr. Cohen is so complex. Dr. Cohen has a certain sort of masculine arrogance, and he is always leading the conversation. When you read it as a therapist, in kind of from a contemporary viewpoint, it's easy to feel that he has been tricked by her into a situation where he takes responsibility all the time for the content of the conversation, and every now and again she'll say a thing and it's like she's wrong-footed him and he'll just change the subject. So they hop around constantly in their conversations, in a way that every time she says something that might be an opening, I feel like he closes it and goes back to something else. But also, I don't want to be arrogant. This may be a part of this doctor's strategy. Like, he's maybe understood something about her that she can only tolerate a certain amount of contact at any given time, perhaps. He also seems to enjoy her playfulness, and it's as if he's a little flattered by her. At one point, he even says that she's flirting with him, and she says that it's not about flirting, it's more about loneliness. And he manages to get her to describe, to some degree, how different her life has been from many other people and how lonely she feels. She has synesthesia. She's been a mathematical genius since she was very young. She's moved around a lot. She has seen these figures for a long time. She's had a lot of desire at the same time as she's not had a lot of experience romantically. So she manages to describe some sense of her own loneliness. And he is able to have philosophical, mathematical conversations with her up to a point. But she knows so much more and she's thought so much more that for a lot of these sections of their conversations, I don't think he can fully understand what she's saying. And quite often he will tell her, I don't know who this person is. I don't know this mathematician. He knows like Wittgenstein and Russell, people that maybe you and I know, but she is aware of like a whole canon of mathematicians from the period and personally knows some of them. So something that is really interesting, which is something I recognize as a therapist myself, is being able to interest yourself in a person's particular interests at the same time as having to accept your own lack of knowledge in the area. Your knowledge or expertise is the art of conversation and contact, and you have to try to join the world of the person you're speaking to. But her world is ultimately so alien that I think there's only brief moments where Dr. Cohen is really able to do this. Another kind of tragedy that this book stages very well is that although she's 20 and Dr. Cohen is in his 40s, he's come into her life too late. She's only 20 years old, but she's already had so many conversations with so many therapists, and she's already so pessimistic about the possibilities of therapeutic conversation. So Cohen is in the unenviable situation of having to try to establish some kind of trust, some kind of relationship with her, which will allow her to feel some hope or some sense that she might be able to use their connection. And in doing this, he accepts her proposal that they're not going to do therapy, they're just chatting. And he's very careful not to push her on things that she's not ready to talk about. And he'll allow her to challenge him, like she's allowed to ask him questions about his life. He gives her cigarettes. Like there are various tools he's using to try to create something new between them that is something she's not experienced. But at the same time, he has the threat of her death hanging over him, both from her lack of eating, but also from her desire to die. So there's a sense that he doesn't have the time that he needs to create this relationship, uh, but it's the only option that he has. From her side of the dyad, the relationship, Alicia is extremely interesting because she, on the one hand, is very challenging towards Cohen. She tells him every time she, or at least some of the times, that she feels that he's doing something kind of by rote. He's doing something that is like a therapist trick. She does it right at the beginning. He asks her to tell him about her life on the first page, and she says, "Oh, are we going to paint by the numbers?" She does this several times through the book. Kind of, she's disappointed by his lack of originality, and she also gives answers often that are either sarcastic or fanciful or just lies. But at the same time, she seems to quite enjoy being caught in this, or when he will say, "That's not true," or "Is that true?" And she'll say no. And it's almost as if, he's passed a small test. Also, I think she's kind of kind to him. Like, I think ultimately she doesn't really feel that he's capable enough to really understand her or to be invested in her. But she kind of tolerates him, is patient with him, gives him a little here and there in their conversations. And you might read it differently, but my feeling is that actually this allows her at a certain point to unburden herself of some things that she does need to share, but that she, because of her very unique personality style, struggles to find anybody to share her inner world with. I also like the way this book talks about, her hallucinations or her, you might call it madness. She's described as schizophrenic in the literature within the book, but I think that the book itself refuses to be that reductive. She has these experiences of figures, of these men or these figures that are in her inner world, that she sees, that she can describe, who talk to her. And she has a lot of ideas about mathematics and spirituality and existence and death that are perhaps quite unusual. But there's a certain respect for this being her particular subjective experience of the world. And I don't feel like the book tries to force upon her a label of madness. It rather erodes our own assumptions about the workings of our mind or our relationship to reality. Towards the end, it really does become a book about knowledge. Alicia and Cohen are forced to understand that they know so little, and that they maybe are so unalike, but that they also both hope for some connection. And it's also a book about life and about death. And she quotes a mathematician, I don't remember who, but who perhaps gave up mathematics because he realized that the endeavor of trying to understand the universe was a fool's errand. I see the book as it goes on as these two figures kind of sitting together within a completely incomprehensible cosmos. I was worried that the end of the book would be a letdown, that it would be over melodramatic, or that it would be tasteless in the way that books about psychiatry often are. But I won't spoil the book by talking about the last section too much. I won't talk about what Alicia reveals about herself as the narrative goes on, and I certainly won't talk about the closing of the novel, except to say that I found it deeply beautiful. Now, if you've watched this video this far and you've also read The Passenger, you're probably sitting there thinking, Vincent, you didn't understand anything about this book because you didn't read the previous novel, so how could you possibly understand Stella Maris? And that may be true, but it's also the truth of the therapist's universe, that somebody comes into our office totally without context, and we try to know them as they are in relationship to us. So I sort of feel like my experience of this book echoed that, though I do really want to read The Passenger after having read this. Okay, so that's my perspective on this novel. I hope it was of some interest to you. If you've read it, feel free to discuss it with me in the comments. If you've read The Passenger, also feel free to talk about that, but please don't spoil the novel for me. And I'm also interested to hear your thoughts about McCarthy more generally. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe if you feel inclined. If you do not feel inclined, good luck to you out there in this dark universe.